What's going on, guys? It is LordKing here again, back with another UFC breakdown / review show. UFC on Fox, as you can see, Demetrious Johnson versus Wilson Hayes. It was a relatively, well, it was pretty good, entertaining sort of card, to be honest, despite the actual lack of viewers it actually obtained on Fox. We can almost go straight into it, but just a little bit of word before. I apologise for not having my Dragon Ball Super review up, in case anyone was actually looking forward to watching that. I've been actually away from my my setup recently, so I haven't actually been able to record any gameplay or do any reviews, anything similar to that. So this is actually the first one I've actually been able to do since I've come back. So without further ado, let's go straight into the actual review of the show. A lot of the fights on the preliminary cards weren't exactly the best sort of things to watch. As you can see, a lot of decisions and technical submission. The two best as were Anthony Smith defeating Andrew Sanchez. Anthony Smith kind of weathered Andrew Sanchez's sort of wrestling barrage throughout the whole fight and his grinding sort of style, and eventually kind of stood the fight up and landed some very, very good shots on him, including a head kick. And he got a very, very sort of good KO on Andrew Sanchez, which made me personally quite happy, to be honest. Next, well, the other one that I wanted to highlight was Aljamain Sterling defeating Augusto Mendes. Aljamain Sterling coming off of his few losses, where arguably one of them I believe he won against Rafael Assunção, but the losses, they were a bit devastating, as he was one of the sort of big upcoming prospects in the division, and having losing the fights won by a tough split decision was quite hard for him. So him actually beating Augusto Mendes, arguably one of the best sort of jiu-jitsu practitioners, one of those top tier sort of people in the UFC for jiu-jitsu. It was a very good win. The fact it was a unanimous decision, he looked very good. Moving on to the actual preliminary card, Tim Elliott versus Louis Smolka. This was within my top favourite fights of the night. As you can see just down here, it did actually win fight of the night. It was, the best way to describe this was, if you watch UFC and things just to see people get knocked out, then this fight wouldn't be for you. But if you are almost a purist, or even if you can just appreciate the wrestling side of things and the jiu-jitsu side of things, the scrambles and just intensity, that sort of style of things, then this fight was absolutely phenomenal. It's the fact that Tim Elliott defeated Louis Smolka by unanimous decision, 30-27, and by all the judges, doesn't really tell the tale, because each round was so damn close. It just means that every single round, Tim Elliott actually just did edge it, and it was. I think that was a fair decision, to be honest. But every single round was so close. Each fighter was going back and forward, reversing positions, trying to do different submission attempts, changing position, doing some stand-up, pushing the pace on each other. It was an incredible sort of fight to watch, just from the scrambling wrestling sort of perspective of things. One takeaway from it is, from Louis Smolka, is he gets taken down far too easily, which was just a bit annoying to see, to be honest. But again, like I mentioned, an incredibly good fight. Tim Elliott showed he has got that very, very diverse sort of style of fighting. Moving on, Rashid Magomedov defeating Bobby Green. I thought Bobby Green would actually win this one, but he actually lost in a split decision. Rashid Magomedov actually just looked a hell of a lot sharper on the feet. It was that was kind of the only way to describe it, to be honest. He just looked a little bit better on the feet. Moving on, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right. Duskinoy defeated Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams just looked he was gassed after the first round. I haven't really seen this. He's a very relatively muscular sort of stature, so we've seen a lot of people with the likes of Yoel Romero, who is a lot of times gassed out from fights and after the first round and things. But it was awful. The fact that they're fighting at bantamweight, and this guy, his fitness just seemed one of the worst I've ever seen in a while. I think maybe it may have had something to do with, I think he's been out of the octagon for, UFC ring for, I think, 2 years now. So it may be coming back has almost ruined him a little bit. But he got knocked out relatively TKO'd relatively devastatingly. And it was good. It was a good sort of, Tom Duskinoy showed what he's worth, to be honest. Volkov defeating Roy Nelson. I thought Roy Nelson was going to take him down and maybe grind a submission or even get a knockout, to be honest. But Volkov did it incredibly well to stuff Roy Nelson's takedowns and also stay on the distance, landing sort of very, very good shots to Roy Nelson, and then just moving in and out, not allowing Roy Nelson to get a takedown or land on his big overhand right. As you can see, he won via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. Tom Volkov being an incredibly tall, he's about 6'7" or something, so it's very hard for someone like Roy Nelson to hit. But obviously the biggest takeaway is that Roy Nelson's chin still stands up incredibly well, where Volkov was hitting him some incredible shots. And Roy Nelson, being Roy Nelson, refuses to ever be put away, which is the thing I'm sure you all know if you have seen him perform. A lot of you probably have. Renato Moicano defeating Jeremy Stephens. This again was one of my big sort of shocks of the card. Moicano was one of the biggest sort of prospects coming up out of the featherweight division, but Jeremy Stephens is known for having his crazy sort of demolishing power and just being able to knock anyone out dead with one punch. So I thought he was going to land, as he is one of those top sort of people in the division. Renato Moicano proving me wrong, well, greatly, to be honest. He did a very similar thing. If you haven't ever seen the fight between Alan Jouban versus Mike Perry, it's a very similar sort of style of thing. Mike Perry having that one sort of thing. He hunts them down for a huge sort of knockout, and Alan Jouban was kind of not running away, but picking his shots and moving in and out, making the better shots and doing more work, to be honest. It worked out the same way with this. Jeremy Stephens was always looking for that one big shot. Moicano was landing some very good leg kicks, some just very taking his time, being methodical and not rushing into things. As you can see, he won a split decision, 29-28, almost across the board. Obviously, one judge gave it to Jeremy Stephens, maybe for the pressure and the ring domination. Now, this fight coming up, Robert Whittaker defeating Ronaldo, well, also known as Jacare Souza. This was, well, this I think is maybe one of the biggest sort of shocks I've seen. Not necessarily shocks, because again, as I mentioned before, MMA math is not a thing. Anyone can beat anyone. But Jacare Souza was so close to a title shot, having lost a split decision to Yoel Romero, which a lot of people thought he won. He was possibly the next in line for a title shot. And I believe maybe due to money issues, and also I suppose just staying intact with your roots, he wanted to keep taking fights with people. So he took his first fight with against Timbo Etched, and he took him down and defeated him very quickly. I think it was maybe by a Kimura. But this fight against Robert Whittaker was a hell of a lot different. Whittaker almost kept a huge distance. Jacare Souza is a boxer on the standing up, and then obviously, as I've mentioned before, has some of the best jiu-jitsu in UFC, if not the world. So Jacare Souza is always in this boxing range, where Robert Whittaker was in this kickboxing sort of range, where even if Rob Whittaker wasn't throwing these sort of kicks, he's still far away enough that Jacare can't threaten with a takedown unless pushed against the fence. Now, what Whittaker was doing, he was taking this very hunch sort of position, which a lot of people would opt against doing, as you can possibly be kneed or kicked in the head. He was getting down very low, with his hands sort of down as well, which again in most situations is kind of a no-no. But I think where he knows he can defeat Jacare Ronaldo Souza is standing up. He was very confident in his own abilities and his defensive abilities to avoid his punches, and I think he wasn't too worried about the kicks either, because Jacare Souza isn't really a kicker. So him having his hands low and being in that sort of low turtley hunched position allowed him to defend almost any takedowns that came, and also almost just beat Jacare Souza standing up. He landed some absolutely incredible shots. It was similar. The finish was similar to the way he finished Derek Brunson. He landed a good, I think it was maybe a right hand to Jacare's temple. He knocked him down the first time, and then he got back up again. He hit him a few more times with some very good punches, and then it was almost over. He landed a head kick, and it was Jacare Souza did quite well, to be honest, to almost take the punches and kicks. And I personally believe that the stoppage maybe wasn't the best time to stop the fight. I feel it could have gone a few more seconds, but in this game, a few seconds can be absolutely life-changing. So maybe it was best that the fight was stopped. But it really does shake up the division now, with Robert Whittaker he may have been maybe 7th or 8th ranked in the division, defeating Jacare Souza, who was 3rd. Again, could have got a title shot. So it shakes things up a hell of a lot. I'm not sure what is next for Jacare Souza, as he did actually sign a 8-fight contract with the UFC. So he has that potential to possibly come back and get his time for redemption, but it's a huge setback for him, which a lot of us didn't actually expect to see. So that was one of the performances of the night. It was absolutely unbelievable to see Robert Whittaker do that. On to Namajunas versus Michelle Waterson. This again was a pretty damn good fight. The whole main card was actually really quite impressive, to be honest. Michelle Waterson came out doing these incredible karate-style kicks. Some of them, the way she kicks her legs, she's obviously been a karate practitioner her whole life, and the way she throws her legs, her dexterity is unlike some that we've ever seen. It's very similar to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. She was throwing these side kicks to the leg and almost trying to chop down the leg of Rose Namajunas, but eventually Rose kind of read onto it and managed to get inside, almost avoiding the leg kick and kind of just taking them and going through it at the same time. So she did incredibly well. Michelle Waterson landed a relatively good sort of takedown, a judo throw takedown, and it would have worked very well if it wasn't for Rose Namajunas' sort of incredible ground game, where she managed to put one of her hooks in and effectively take Waterson's back by not allowing her to transition fully into the side control position. So she basically took her back, and it was all kind of they stood up in this very weird way. If you've seen Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm, you'll know exactly what I mean. They did this sort of clinch, and when they pushed away, Rose Namajunas landed this vicious sort of head kick on Michelle Waterson. It didn't knock her out, but it put her in a different sort of planet, to be honest. I don't think she knew where she was. Rose Namajunas then pretty much did what she does best and synced in this rear naked choke with actual Michelle Waterson's hand trapped as well. She couldn't even defend it. And you can see in the video of it, Michelle Waterson's face was going red, her veins were popping out in her forehead, and the blood was coming from her nose. Overall, it was an incredible performance for Rose Namajunas. Michelle Waterson, being the nice person she sort of seems to be, was smiling and hugging Rose, seemed to be relatively happy. She may have learned something from it. But overall, an incredible performance for Rose Namajunas, and I expect to see her maybe get a title shot next after Joanna Jędrzejczyk's next title defense. So again, a very good fight there. Now on to the main event, Demetrious Johnson defeating Wilson Hayes, as you can see, via armbar in round 3. Now, I'm not too sure what to really say about it. I said this in the pre-fight build in my preview show, that I don't think there is any way that Demetrious Johnson can lose this fight unless the smallest percentage is maybe he gets hit with a huge right hand or he gets submitted. Wilson Hayes, when I say submitted, Wilson Hayes is one of the best practitioners again of jiu-jitsu in the UFC. He's not just a black belt in jiu-jitsu, he is a very, very good high-ranking black belt. Again, one of the best in the UFC, pound for pound. So now the fact that Demetrious Johnson actually defeated this man with a submission, especially an armbar, it almost says a hell of a lot about Demetrious Johnson. He is, in my opinion, currently, not necessarily of all time, but currently he is by far the best champion that is about. I think he is the current best pound for pound fighter in the UFC, and well, with this fight he equalled Anderson Silva's most ever title defenses, which is 10. Does it say? Yes. So consecutive title defenses 10. He equalled his record. The next one, I'm not sure who he's going to fight next. Maybe his third fight with Joseph Benavidez, or maybe if Sergio Pettis does a little bit well in another fight, he may fight him or something. So I'm not too sure. Basically, Demetrious Johnson is a very methodical sort of fighter, similar to GSP. He spends almost the first round figuring you out. He'll be programming you, making you do the things that he wants to do, and then the rest of the fight is him kind of manipulating it. Standing up Demetrious Johnson, as Demetrious Johnson's coach says, Matt Hume says, he wants Demetrious Johnson, to put people into the matrix. What that means is he wants people to be thinking they're doing these sort of things and basically not seeing what Demetrious Johnson is doing, and just kind of, well, you all know, if I were to say being put in the matrix, you would all have your own interpretation of it, but it's not really good for the person who's being put in the matrix. Demetrious Johnson was too fast, he was too accurate, he was landing good shots to the face, good shots to the body. Wilson Hayes' his eyes and face was busted up. I don't really think he could see that much, to be honest. Overall, it was one of the most one-sided sort of performances we've seen in a while, especially being Demetrious Johnson, the person that he is. Like I mentioned, in the third round, he went for I think it was a right hand, and he basically seamlessly transitioned into a takedown, took side control. Demetrious Johnson being known as one of the maybe the best sort of side control practitioners in the game. There's a difference between jiu-jitsu and MMA sort of grappling. MMA grappling is very practical to MMA, whereas jiu-jitsu is very submission based, and you know your positions. They're not the exact same thing. Now, Wilson Hayes is some of the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC, but Demetrious Johnson arguably has the best MMA grappling in the UFC. The fact he almost pieced Wilson Hayes up on the feet for a hell of a long time, kind of wearing him out on the feet, he then took it to the ground and kind of did what, again, he does best on the ground as well. Going into side control, it eventually took a mounted sort of position. He was landing these elbows, and the elbows were almost a sort of a decoy for him to eventually fish one of his sort of hooks in onto Wilson Hayes' arm as he was defending himself, trying to stand up and reach for an underhook. He fished his elbow and transitioned into an incredible armbar, very similar to what we saw. So I believe it was against Kyoji Horiguchi, a similar sort of armbar he did, and again very, very close to that being the end of the round. further just clarifying to me, Demetrious Johnson is, in my opinion, the best current champion that we have and the best pound-for-pound fighter that I think we have. The man is incredible. That he's also incredibly humble as well. From what we see, he doesn't ever call for the huge amounts of money. He doesn't trash talk. He just goes in and does exactly what he has to do. And I would love to see him actually break Anderson Silva's record and maybe get a little bit more recognition from the public. To be honest, it would be nice to see a gentleman like this actually get paid what he deserves, as opposed to the people who normally talk more getting paid what I would say they don't deserve. I'm not mentioning any names specifically. Overall, I believe it was an incredibly sort of entertaining card. I enjoyed it a hell of a lot. Unfortunately, the viewer numbers were very, very low. One of the lowest Fox has ever experienced, despite it being on free TV. There may be other reasons for that. A lot of people speculate mainly because the playoffs were on in NHL and NBA, so that may have a huge part to do with it as well. But either way, I thought it was a very good card. This weekend we have Cub Swanson versus Artem Lobov in what could be an interesting sort of card again. I have my own sort of views on this main event and Cub Swanson versus Artem Lobov in particular. I can go more into that on my sort of preview that I will do of that later on this week. Most likely I shall be doing a lot more Xenoverse. I was planning on getting 2 Xenoverse videos out this week, maybe one tomorrow and the one the day after tomorrow, then with also my UFC preview show. Thank you then, as always, guys. If you were looking for my Dragon Ball Super review, I apologise for not having it out this week. Like I did say, I was actually away. So, again, just very quickly, the episode was quite good. It was nice to see Android 17 sort of coming into it. Again, the power scaling thing is kind of redundant now, but it was an entertaining sort of episode. I think it should have been 1 episode, but it was good to see Android 17 back in it. So thank you, guys. As always, I've been LordKing. I hope you enjoyed my videos. Please like, share and subscribe and tune in next time. Thank you very much.